Hi, everybody. Dr. Nikita Vizniak here with the amazing.
Dr. Catherine Chung.
And today we're going to be talking about a fantastic diet that we'd like to educate you on, which is the.
Low FODMAPs diet. I
Okay,
feel
so
like everyone knows about the low FODMAPs diet nowadays, or at least has heard about it. It's quite trendy nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely it is. But our key thing here is, of course, we're taking all this information from our nutrition book, where Dr. Chung is one of our major contributors right here. Steps to feel better, eating for optimal health. You can do it. We can help. And the low FODMAP diet you would find on page 92, along with all the research associated with it, education, assessment, and action. Fantastic. All right. So who is this diet designed for?
Generally, it is designed for people, most notably for IBS, which I have my own opinions on
Mhm.
in terms of that diagnosis, and fibromyalgia. So chronic pain that and fatigue that we're just unsure of why the root cause of that is, more or less, and then IBS. So very vague diagnoses, I would
Yeah,
say.
and even fibromyalgia potentially as well. All right. What does
Mhm.
the FODMAP even stand for? Because the acronym is a little bit odd for a lot of people to grasp even.
Yeah, so pretty much fermentable. So anything that is fermentable, oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, polyols. So those are all just really fancy words for sugars.
Sugars and alcohols. Yep, absolutely what we're looking
Yes.
at here. Okay, so foods to avoid in this diet. What are we trying to get out of the way?
So when you're looking at the FODMAP, so the FODMP, so all of those will fit under all of those foods to avoid down there. So you have the fructose, those are healthy sugars if you really think about it. So fruit sugars, lactose, yes, it is a sugar, but and that's all found in dairy products. And then you have your polyols, which are in more berries and stone fruits. And then you have fruit tans, which are more in cruciferous vegetables, most notably the garlic and onions and asparagus, which will most likely cause the most issues in general. And generally, a very good diagnostic thing for clinicians is when your patient comes in and they're like, I got a diagnosis of IBS and I started the low FODMAP diet because I was doing some research and I feel I'm starting to feel worse on the low FODMAP diet, then
Mhm.
it might actually signify that they have SIBO because they are including things in their diet that the SIBO likes to break down a little bit more.
Mhm.
The other key that would signal you for that is if they're thinking of going on low FODMAP diet, and they're eating healthier
Mhm.
and then they start to feel worse from eating healthier. That's also another flag that maybe they have some type of overgrowth going on, most notably SIBO.
Okay. All right. So that's good for us to know. But I'm surprised when I look at this diet because it seems like a lot of the substances there. I'd think an apple is good for me. I think watermelons, artichokes, even natural source honey, these are good choices, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just goes to show that every diet is very personalized and it's not a one size fit all. Even within this realm, like for IBS patients that are using low FODMAPs, for some of them, apples is fine. Like they could handle apples on a small level, right?
Mhm.
So it really does depend, but it is always interesting that healthy foods are on this list.
Yeah. But basically, you're looking at a dose response, probably a smaller dose just to try and see if you have interactions or anything like that would be of benefit. I mean, not of
Mhm.
benefit, but could probably still be okay within the diet. All right.
Correct.
So let's go ahead and look at the foods that are allowed. So I'm going to be cutting a lot of these things way back on my diet. What am I going to be bringing more products in then?
So you're bringing in non-gluten grains. So that's
Mhm.
where the non-wheat breads and the rice and the polenta come in. Although oats technically does have gluten in it, but you can do gluten-free oats. And then when we're looking at milk products, you can see a lot of it is either is pretty much just lactose free.
Mhm.
So and the hard cheeses are there. You're like, why is it that hard cheeses are there when it's a milk product technically? But it's just because harder cheeses have a lower amount of lactose compared to the softer cheeses. So if your patients are just like, I just can't give up the cheese or the charcuterie boards,
Yeah.
the harder cheeses are the way to go. And
Nice,
then
nice.
just good old nice antioxidant rich vegetables. They're not necessarily within one family or not. It's just more they're more colorful and have a lot more antioxidants in there in the veg over there.
Excellent. All right. And then other things that I could include potentially would also be these fruits as well, right? So blueberries, I feel like you can't go wrong with blueberries. They are almost a superfood for anything, for any kind of nutrient and antioxidant content that you would want. You
Mhm.
can see other sugars there potentially too. Tell us about these sugars that we should allow.
It's really interesting when you are looking at things that you shouldn't eat in terms of sugars. Everyone's just like, oh, but all the good stuff is there. Honey, or yeah, you got honey, and then you have brown sugar, and then the foods that are allowed or the sugars that are allowed are like golden syrup, molasses, like straight up white sugar. It's
Hmm.
very questionable, like why is that? And it's just because these are processed enough that they won't be fermented. And that's
Hmm.
the key to the low FODMAP diet is you're eating things that are non-fermentable. And
Hmm.
sometimes they can be processed or unhealthy foods too,
Hmm. All right.
which will trick you a little bit because you're just like, oh, I can eat all the processed and gross foods that I want and I feel amazing. So then you're like, there's something else going on.
Yeah. Exactly. All right, perfect. So yeah, we have a couple of randomized control trials and other studies here that we can reference for irritable bowel syndrome and fibromyalgia where people have shown benefit. But do you want to elaborate? You were talking more about SIBO for the IBS. You don't seem too happy with this as a diagnosis.
Yeah, IBS is a pretty vague diagnosis, in my opinion. It's a diagnosis of exclusion. The criteria is that you have to rule out everything else before you get to irritable bowel syndrome as a diagnosis. Clinically, what I've seen is it falls under three categories. It's either infection based, it's stress based, or it is food sensitivity based. But
Mm-hmm.
food sensitivity on its own doesn't really exist. It usually is paired with the other two, right? So infection, you're looking at H. pylori, SIBO, candida overgrowth, and then when you're looking at stress, a increase in cortisol levels or requirements actually decreases this thing called secretory IgA, which is your immune barrier along your gut lining. So
Mm-hmm.
the more stressed you are, the decrease in that immune barrier, which then leads to a lot of irritation when you're eating foods that when what will then cause the IBS symptoms, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's why there's that association between stress and IBS. So that's why I'm not the biggest fan of the diagnosis IBS, just because there usually is a root cause
Well,
to it that
exactly.
no one
And it's the
really
same
talks
even
about.
with the fibromyalgia diagnosis. Again, really a diagnosis of exclusion that we're looking at for most patients, right? So,
Yep,
yeah.
correct.
All right. And then here's just a quick summary picture that everybody can look at that shows you kind of how the diet is based down, how it might look on a plate if you were to break it down into the key components of it right there. All right,
Mhm.
Dr. Chung, is there anything else you give us for the low FODMAP diet that we should be aware of? Who's it for again?
It's for people that have very vague IBS or digestive issues or chronic pain and fatigue.
Mm-hmm. And the application does have fairly good research behind it, and we see good benefits there. So I will say thank you very much for your time today, madam. We've
You're
enjoyed
very
it very
welcome.
much, and we will see you in the future. Bye,
Thank you for
everybody.
having me.
Bye now.
Bye.